If you've ever looked at Roth conversions in the past, it's probably time to take another look. In today's video, I want to show you something that very few people are talking about. This is something that changes the math on Roth conversions for a lot of retirees. So if you've ever considered doing a Roth conversion, or maybe you're in the middle of a multi-year plan, you'll likely want to go back and revisit that after this because some major tax planning assumptions have shifted, and even if you have a plan in place right now, it's probably out of date at this point. When the One Big Beautiful Bill Act was signed, there was a big sigh of relief because now tax brackets won't go up in 2026 as originally planned. But there's another part of the story that isn't being talked about enough, and it might matter even more if you have a traditional IRA balance or any other pre-tax balance that's large, and if you're thinking about doing Roth conversions with that. So the brackets didn't just stay at their current percentages. The width or amount of income allowed within each bracket also stayed the same. And that quiet detail changes the math in a big way. So let's say you've been converting a portion of your IRA each year. Under the old law, many of the brackets would have narrowed starting in 2026, and you would have had less room to convert at your target tax rate before starting to spill over into a higher one. But now, with the structure of the brackets locked in, you have more space to convert at lower rates. Now, that opens the door to doing larger and more strategic conversions over time. So today, I want to show you a case study showing how one couple is doing this to reduce lifetime taxes and create more tax-efficient income and get a larger amount converted at the same time. But before we get into the case study, I think it does help to understand just how much the brackets would have changed if the law had expired. So when we put the brackets side by side, the one on the right being if the Trump tax cuts had expired, and the ones on the left being if the Trump tax cuts were extended, we can see just what a difference it would have made. Now, there wouldn't have been a big difference in the first bracket, and not really in the second bracket either, except it would have gone from 12% to 15%. Even the third bracket wouldn't have been that much different, except going from 22 to 25%. But where we're starting to get to the big difference is the fourth bracket, the 24% bracket. With the continuation of Trump tax cuts, you could take your taxable income all the way up to just over $405,000 and still stay in the 24% bracket. But if the tax cuts had expired, that same amount of income would not have stayed in that range. Much of it would have spilled into the 28 and even 33% bracket. So that shift in bracket exposure would have increased the tax costs significantly for retirees who were doing larger conversions. Now that those brackets have been extended, the opportunity to do strategic conversions is still available, and the best way to show how much this matters is through a real-world example. So let's take a look at how the extension of tax cuts has changed the math on Roth conversions for a typical retired couple who have been good savers. So this couple, they're both 65 and they're retiring in 2025. They wanted to analyze Roth conversions starting in 2026. Their annual income includes $10,000 in interest, $10,000 in dividends, $50,000 in IRA distributions, and $60,000 in combined Social Security benefits. They've also decided to convert additional IRA dollars to Roth, bringing their taxable income up to the top of the 24% bracket. So for comparison, I modeled two scenarios using the exact same conversion amount. One where the Trump tax cuts continue, as they now do under the One Big Beautiful Bill, and one where the tax cuts expired in 2026. And here's how their taxes look in 2026 under both versions of the law. Despite having the exact same income and the same Roth conversion amount, the couple would pay over $17,000 more in federal taxes if the tax cuts had expired. And that's just for 1 year. So now let's zoom out and look at what happens over time, because when looking at Roth conversions, it's usually something that does happen over multiple years. So in this case, we assume that they converted every year from 2025 to 2033. So this would have been the tax cost of doing conversions under the Trump tax cuts, and this would have been if the Trump tax cuts would have expired. I mean, by 2033, the difference in annual tax costs reaches over $46,000. Now, when you're executing a multi-year conversion strategy, that's going to add up pretty quick. So let me show you just how fast that can add up. If we take it one step further and we look at cumulative taxes paid over time, the results are even more dramatic. By 2033, when those conversions were complete, the couple would have paid $338,000 more in total federal tax if the tax cuts had expired. So this is not a case of doing something different. This is a case of doing the exact same thing, but under a different tax structure. And the result is hundreds of thousands of dollars in potential tax savings. So for retirees sitting on large pre-tax balances and wanting to do some Roth conversion, this change makes a big difference. More income now fits in the lower tax brackets, and that creates more room to convert, more predictability in planning, and a better chance of avoiding some tax surprises down the road. Because today, we know what we have in tax rates, and even though they're saying it's permanent, who knows how long it's going to be permanent. But for now, we know what we have. Now, you may be watching this and thinking, well, Devin, I already have a Roth conversion plan built out, or you could be one of the people who looked at Roth conversions in the past and decided not to do them. In either case, it's time for a second look, and here's why. Most financial plans created over the past few years, whether it was built with an advisor, just a software tool that you purchased, or a spreadsheet that you made, it included one key assumption, that the 2017 tax cuts were set to expire at the end of 2025. Now, this was not a guess. It was written into the law. Even the projections that we created for our own clients reflected that assumption because it was the most accurate information available at the time. Now, thankfully, reviewing and updating the plan is already part of our annual client service process for our comprehensive clients, so they won't miss a beat. But I do worry some about those who are going to keep pressing forward based on planning in prior years because something big has changed. And for many retirees, this new law is going to create an opportunity to save thousands, and in some cases, as we've already seen, hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of retirement. So if you have a large traditional IRA or any other kind of pre-tax account, this is the right time to revisit your plan and rerun your conversion strategy using the tax code as it stands today, not as we once expected it to be. And if my team and I can help you figure this out, don't hesitate to get in touch. There's a link down in the description. Thanks for watching.